Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. And as I mentioned in the last couple of videos I did, I'm kind of getting back to my bread and butter, covering obscure bands from the late 60s, early 70s. And I've been doing a lot of more speculative videos recently about bands that almost were and bands that were that are a little more obscure. And this one's going to be a little tough because there's a lot of different opinions of this band. That's the band Road. And of course, those of you out there who are familiar with them know that they're made up of some pretty well known people. And the band was fronted by Rod Richards, who left Rare Earth. And a lot of the reason that a lot of those early Rare Earth albums were so great was Rod Richards' scorching guitar work and a great use of wah wah. And when you see a picture of him on the album, he looks a little bit like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix in his garb, being a great looking guitar hero. So we got Rod Richards and Noel Redding. Noel Redding, of course, from who was also in Fat Mattress at the same time, and of course used to be in the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And then Leslie Sampson, a really killer drummer. He was in another really cool hard rock band called Stray Dog, and so to see him in this band was a real treat. And so you got a really great pedigree. But it was released on a subsidiary of Motown. So Motown had two subsidiaries. One was Rare Earth that they created for the band Rare Earth, and then they ended up signing a lot of other bands, including Toe Fat, had somewhat of a profile. So there's some cool bands on the Rare Earth label, and but then they started another subsidiary label called Natural Resources. I'm not really sure why. As far as I know, this is the only record that came out on that label, and I'm surprised they just didn't release it um, on the Rare Earth label. And I guess the band got together because Rod Richards left Rare Earth and was very popular in the UK. So he went over to the UK actually to put put together a new band and start doing solo work. And so Road got picked up pretty quick, signed to Natural Resources, and then they recorded this album uh, partially in London and then partially in LA at the Record Plant in 1972. And as I mentioned before, Leslie Sampson was in Stray Dog. He was also in the Noel Redding band, so there's a connection there. Noel Redding and Leslie Sampson had already been used to playing together, both during this period and afterwards. And then Leslie Sampson actually played under an alias on the Captain Copter and the Twirly Birds, the Randy California record. So he's got a nice pedigree. So let's get into the album itself. I know it's highly regarded amongst collectors and psychedelic and hard rock fans, but for me, it's a really mixed bag, and the stuff that's good on it is really good, but it really is a mixed bag. And of course, as you would guess, Noel Redding, as usual, insisted on writing some songs that are kind of mediocre, and he also sings on some songs that are mediocre. And so that mars the record. The Noel Redding, I mean the Rod Richards tunes are pretty killer, and he's a pretty forceful singer. So I wish the whole album was Rod Richards songs and Rod Richards vocals. It would have made a much better record. The other problem I have with it is you can kind of tell that they really didn't have that much material. The songs kind of get a little sloppy here and there. The hard rock tunes have a sound that sounds more like 1969 or so. They're a little psychedelic with a lot of heavy wah wah work, and they just don't sound like 1972 to me. But they had a lot of riffs, and the material on there is based on riffs. There's not much arrangement to them. They're somewhat sloppy, and the record is recorded a little bit murky. And so I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's kind of a mixed bag. But that said, it has its charms. The moments that are good and great are really worth hearing. and they really make the record worthwhile to have. But once again, I bought it in cutouts in probably 72 or 73, and it has enough charms. I've been listening to the record for like 50 years now, and it has a lot of charms to it, but I wish it was a lot better than it was. And I think a lot of people who are collectors probably are a little more forgiving for the drawbacks on the record. And I got a pretty open mind. I listen to a lot of records that takes a little while for their charms to unfold. I listen to a lot of records that maybe aren't recorded that well. I listen to a lot of records where the material is not quite great, but this one is a little bit of a disappointment. But that said, it's worth having. I don't really know what Rod Richards did after that record. As far as I know, he seems to have disappeared. If anybody knows where he ended up, please tell me in the comments. But so there you have it. Road, um, worth hearing, worth having, but a little disappointing, and I rarely say that. So anyway, I'll put the link below for you, those of you who haven't heard the record, and you can decide for yourself. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.